Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. If we can have your attention, please. Firstly, thank you very much for your attendance here this morning at Airfield for our Planning for the Future seminar. My name is Darren Chambers. I'm the manager of Lisney, our local branch here in Dundrum, and I hope you find this morning a very informative experience. First of all, I'd like to welcome you to Airfield, which I think is one of Dublin's hidden treasures. As a matter of interest and a little bit of early audience participation, can I ask, by a show of hands, many people are in Airfield for the first time ever this morning? Okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay, well, I can't believe you've not been here before, first of all, and for those of you who are here, after we finish the seminar this morning, you are free to enjoy the amenities and take a walk through the grounds of Airfield at your leisure, and it's a wonderful amenity, and please enjoy it. Just to take you through briefly what it is that we have here in the format this morning, it's to provide you with an insight into the process of downsizing, and in a few moments my colleague David Bewley will give you a brief overview of the process of planning a downsizing move. After David, just to show you on screen what the plan for the morning is, after David, I'm delighted to say Brian Kirwan from Amory Solicitors will talk us through the conveyancing process in Ireland. And following Brian, we have two speakers, Patricia Devaney and Mary McCarthy, who will give you a first-hand account of their experiences of downsizing. Patricia downsized to a smaller property she built adjoining her original home, and Mary moved to from a larger house to an apartment. So both will provide a really interesting insight into the process and first-hand account of it. Following Patricia and Mary, we will host a questions and answers session, and after this we'd be delighted if you can join us across the yard in the dairy for some tea, coffee and some of Airfield's famous scones and cream. So I'll pass you over to David now, and thank you very much.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Lisney at Airfield. I was standing outside meeting a few people who I haven't seen over the years, and one lady came up to me and said she remembered me being in a house with her 25 years ago. I was going to tell you all I've worked in Lisney's for 10 years, but that's not really true. I've worked there over 30 years. And the interesting thing about that is that I sold houses in the mid-80s that I've sold again subsequently. And someone tells me that the generation is approximately 30 years. And why we're all here today, I think, is all about generations and the way we all move on. It happens to us all, we can't deny it. Downsizing or right-sizing. I prefer the word right-sizing. Downsizing has a bit of a negative connotation to it. Briefly, the last 10 years has seen a massive change in the property market, the way we buy and sell houses. If I had a property supplement from 10 or 12 years ago, it would be auction, auction, auction. Today, you don't see very many auctions. In fact, the only auctions you see are associated with distressed sales, none of which any of us would really like to be involved with, either on a buying or a selling side of the equation. So it's private treaty sales is the way the property market is regulated today, for better or for worse. It does make buying and selling houses a bit more difficult. A number of people speaking to you today, I suspect, will allude to that fact. Why downsize? Well, I think we probably all know why we downsize, but in truth, we end up living in houses. Our children are gone. I was out with a gentleman yesterday, and he said, we live really in one room. 2 of the rooms get wheeled out for Christmas, but we use the kitchen and the family room for the other 364 days of the year. He said, we have to heat it, we have to maintain it, and it's too much trouble. We'd like to spend more time abroad. We need a smaller house. The garden's too big. These are things we hear all the time. They're day-to-day issues. But there are other things associated with it. I mean, houses cost money to run. Older houses cost more money to run than newer houses. And by living in a smaller and more economical house, you're reducing your day-to-day expenses, and you've more money in your pocket. Where you lived 30 years ago and today may not be suitable for where you want to be living in the future. Kids and schools and buses. Buses, yes. Schools, probably not relevant today. So there are reasons why we lived somewhere and now we need to live somewhere else. They are pros, so you make life easier for yourselves, less of a garden, more money in your pocket. There are cons too. It's a very emotive thing, selling the family home. I'd like to say to people that I think you should look at this positively. Look at the house that you've lived in for 30 years and remember the good times. Don't be dragged out of it kicking and screaming. That's not the way to leave a house. Leave of your own free will and look back at the good times when the house was there. Generally, by trading down or trading to the right size property, you will be moving into a slightly more aggressive end of the property market. This is a money thing. You are moving into an area of the market where there are also traders up. So, I'll say it, I don't want to say it, but I think we should all hear it. People who are downsizing do find it a bit tricky that what they're paying for is more expensive per se than what they are selling. It's really a fact of life, and there's nothing you can do about it. If you're moving into an area for 3-bedroom semis, they will also be attracting the first-time buyers. So there's more people to buy a more generic type of house. There are expenses associated with selling houses. You have to pay estate agents, you have to pay solicitors, you have to pay stamp duty, moving costs, and probably refurbishment costs or kitchens and bathrooms and things like that. There is also, I think, a perception that there is a lack of supply for where you're going. That lack of supply really only exists until the day you buy a house, and then when the next time you look on a website or open a newspaper, you'll think that there's plenty of things for sale. Again, that's just Sod's Law. When is the right time to downsize? I think, going back to walking out of your house happy with your last 30 years, the right time to move is when you're fit and able, and that you can move into your new accommodation full of vim and vigour and look forward. That's the way I've seen people do it and make a great success of it. I haven't downsized yet in my life. Some people think I should be doing it. Some of my colleagues and definitely my children. I've no intention of doing it at the moment. But I do have personal experience. I have parents, I have in-laws, I have uncles and aunts. And those that have moved at the right time have really reaped the rewards. Particularly, my parents, I suppose that's the closest involvement I've had with it. They lived in a large house with far too much gardens. Now they live in a much smaller house with smaller gardens. And my father in particular is very happy with his lot. He can spend his time fiddling with old motorbikes and not worrying about hedges and roofs and things that really he has no interest in dealing with. Where to buy, that is key. It requires a lot of thought. What are your requirements? Where do your children live? Transport. What are your hobbies today versus what were your hobbies 30 years ago? We all change. Do we still go to the golf club? Have we given up the golf club? Would we like to get the 46A into town? For those of you who remember the 46A 30 years ago, you wouldn't dare sit on it because you wouldn't know where to bring you and how long it would take you to get there. Today, the 46A, everyone sings its praises. It's a remarkable service. So things change. Be open-minded about it all. I mentioned earlier about auctions and private treaty sales. The crux of this whole conversation really is the process of buying and selling. In truth, unless you have an awful lot of money and you have the ability to buy a house before you sell your existing house, you need to sell first. Probably, more than probably, rent and then buy. Now I know some of those words are what people don't want to hear, but that is the truth of it. It is very difficult to tie a transaction where you sell your house and buy a house, and to tie those two transactions together. We gave a talk about 6 months ago to a similar group of people, and the gentleman informed everyone that he had secured bridging finance. He may have secured bridging finance, but truthfully it wasn't that helpful to the assembled group, because bridging finance is extremely difficult to get today, if not impossible. There will always be a story about someone who got it, but in truth, it doesn't exist. So that means you sell, you rent, you buy. Unless, of course, you have a substantial nest egg, in which case you can then buy sell and not worry about renting. And I know people don't want to hear that, but I'm afraid that's the way the world works. It does give you security. If you remember back to people who bought houses in 2006 or 2007 and then struggled to sell their house, they were the proud owner of 2 houses, and we're a long way from 2007, but still most people don't want to be the proud owner of 2 houses. What do you buy and what do you move to? Well, I suppose everyone would like a bungalow near the QBC in the Lewis with a small south-facing garden. Some of them exist, not many. Bungalows take up a lot of space, and you don't see people building bungalows. Today, certainly not, and even back in the day, bungalows probably make up 5% of the general housing stock. Apartments. There are an increasing number of apartments. There was one good news story I'd like you all to take away from here today. In about 6 months' time, March I think of next year, we will be launching Fernbank on the Notre Dame school site. There are about 260, 270 apartments of various sizes going in there. So there are apartments near Dundrum Town Centre, near the Lewis, ideally positioned for people to downsize to, but they will also be of appeal to people who want to get a roof over their heads in a great suburb in South County Dublin. For those of you who aren't familiar with apartments, they have terrible things like service charges. Well, we all pay insurance on our houses, we pay for bins, we pay for water, or no, we don't pay for water anymore. We're going to have a referendum on that actually. But we do pay for these things. Some of the things we don't really appreciate we pay for, like the parking in front of our house. When you pay a service charge in an apartment, that just covers all these things. It's not a bad thing, it's just the way they're all centrally managed. They have to be done like that. The insurance has to be organised by the management company. Townhouses can have service charges where the roads aren't taken in charge, and the roads would need to be improved or repaired every 20 years, and that's why you pay a service charge. They're not particularly a bad thing. Some of them are a bit steamy, and some of them are good. It's important to see how these places are managed. New buildings, they're BER efficient. You won't know yourselves in a modern house. Patricia will talk to you the merits of living in an A-rated house. Her mobile phone may not work in it, but at least her heating bills are remarkably small. I mean, you just don't need to turn the heating on in modern buildings. So we spend a lot of time going to see people in houses over the years. As I said, I met one lady earlier, I was in her house 25 years ago. That house still hasn't been sold. We're quite happy to come and talk to anyone in their house at any time. I have files filed away carefully. They're gathering dust. The house hasn't been on the market, but we have a relationship with these people. We go and see them every couple of years and we give them our advice. But I think start the process early. We're not going to throw you out of your house. Make your own mind up. As I said earlier, do it when you're mentally and physically able. That's important, because moving house is tough. It physically is a tough thing, and mentally it is tough as well. So do it when you're fit and able. That's the one thing I would hope people take away from here today. There's a lot of sorting out. You can pay people to do this, you can pay people to sell your house, George Stevens will move your furniture, you can do all these things, but there's a personal thing that only you can deal with. And that is hard work, physically and mentally, as I said. Most of the houses people buy, you can take some of your own stuff with you, but a lot of stuff you have in your house, you'll have to find new homes for it. Our colleagues who sell or in the furniture business will throw their eyes up to heaven and tell you that people aren't buying brown furniture, as they like to describe it. And I regret to say that by and large is true. Seek expert advice. Well, we're Lisneys, we believe we're experts. We have Brian from Amory's here, who's an expert in legals. Financial planning, a very important thing to do. Get out and look at property. Go and look at properties you thought you'd never look at. Look at apartments. Apartment living It's for some people, it's not for other people. Look at the size of these places. They're quite small, some of them. Can you live in it? Think about it. It's homework. We haven't moved house, as I say, for 30 years. So go out and look at houses on Saturdays. We all stand in houses on Saturdays, so we know exactly what it's like. I know you've better things to do with your Saturdays, but it's a bit of an education. 30 years ago, the housing market was a very different place. So that's really what I have to say for you. We'll do questions and answers at the end to keep it tidy. There's lots of my colleagues here. I hope they're all wearing their Disney badges, so when we're across the way having tea and buns, you can come and collar us then and ask us for our personal views. There's lots of my colleagues. They won't all be speaking to you today, but they're round and about and they're clearly identifiable. Thank you very much. Brian Kerwin from Avery Solicitors is next up.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you very much, David.
Keep it close to your mouth.
Darren, just want you to get up my slides there.
Sorry, Brian.
You're okay. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would just like to thank Darren and all the Lisney team for inviting me here today to talk to you. I'm going to talk to you today briefly about the conveyancing process in Ireland, riveting stuff. And I'll try to shed some light on issues that may arise for those of you that are considering downsizing. And I'll try and give you some from my own personal experience dealing with people downsizing, some of the more common issues I've come across, such as issues arising on planning permission, those of you that may have built small extensions or sunrooms, that type of thing, and the tax implications being two of the more common issues that we come across. To start, I'll briefly go through the actual process. I'm going to say agreed right through to closing. An important point to start that for both buyers and sellers should be aware that just because the property is gone sale agreed doesn't has gone sale agreed. This is when a solicitor is usually appointed, and it's at this point the auctioneer will provide us with the sales advice slip outlining the arrangement that has been reached. I was going to mention it from a practical point of view, but David has completely contradicted me. Just to always let both your auctioneer and your solicitor know that you are downsizing. I would argue that on occasion it can be possible to coordinate both the sale and the purchase, but I do acknowledge it is extremely tricky. After you instruct your solicitor, the first thing that you will need are the title deeds to the property. From a practical point of view, just make sure you know where they are. They could be in a bank from 30 years ago, in an old solicitor's office, that kind of thing. So just know that you can put your hand on them. At this point, the draft contract will be put together and copy title, everything is going to be sent out to the purchaser's solicitor. So just from a practical point of view, make sure you know where the title deeds are. More often than not, once the contract for sale has been issued, there's going to be, we're coming into the process then of pre-contract inquiries. What usually happens here is there will be issues with title deeds, with planning, with that kind of thing. The purchaser solicitor is going to raise all these issues just to make sure everything is in order before he's going to bind his client to a contract. These are rarely instrumental, but you should be aware that they may be time consuming to resolve. Once the purchasers are happy with the draft contract, once you're happy with it again, it's ready to be signed by you. Again, from a practical point of view, it may be possible to insert a condition in the contract that the sale of your current home and sale of your new home is all to happen simultaneously. Again, it's something that we can look at, and it is very difficult to coordinate. The contract is then signed in duplicate, and the balance deposit paid. Is only when the vendor also signs the contract for sale,
contracts are exchanged. At this point, we're now legally binding, so at this point you are legally obliged to finalise the sale. From this point, usually, process will speed up a bit. Closing date then is usually set. On the closing date, what we'll have then are searches are usually the most important thing against both the vendors and the property. So I think something to look out for if anyone ever had any, or hopefully you didn't, judgments or that kind of thing registered against you. If they show up on searches, they are going to cause significant delays. Searches will highlight judgments that individuals may have registered against them and can be extremely problematic when trying to close a sale. An example I recently had was where a guy had a judgment for 50,000 registered against him. The creditor went and registered the judgment against his property. So when searches were carried out on the closing day, this 50,000 charge that wasn't known about was there on the title. Sale couldn't be closed until the 50,000 was actually paid off. So just again, it's part of the process. It does happen, and these charges can be registered against properties. All going well, once the searches are clear and all the required title documents are received from the vendor solicitors, then the balance of the purchase price will be released to the sellers and the transaction will complete. I've just wanted to give you an idea of the charges that you're looking at. So we've given you an example here for the purchase of a price for 250,000. First thing, stamp duty 1%, €2,500. Stamp duty over $1 million is 2% on anything over $1 million. Commissioners' fees, these will apply on all conveyancing transactions, €20 on average. Fees to law searchers, again for the searches I just talked about, usually come in around the €80. Land registry fees, again, these are applicable on every transaction. For our example here, 200 to 400,000, we're looking at €700 based on the value of the transaction. If you're registering a new mortgage, €175, and then online land registry fees include taking up a new copy folio, €10. So those are the fees that you're looking at. So based on the figure of 250,000, you're looking at €3,485 for fees on the purchase price for 250,000. Just to give you an indication there on that. Just since we are at a downsizing, I just wanted to give you some practical legal advice, just for when you are selling again. First one there is title deeds. Where the title deeds, I spoke about this a bit already, but just again, make sure you know where they are. They can be taken up pretty quickly. Property tax, LPT and PPR. This is something that you are going to have to deal with when your house goes sale agreed. Taxes on property is certainly an area where your input is required. The NPPR charge, a lot of you probably think this isn't applicable to your property if it's your family home, and it's not, but you will still have to get the relevant declarations to say that it does not apply to your home, and it's something you'll have to contact the council for. And just from a practical point of view, just be aware of it. It's just an annoying box to take really for you that you'll have to look after. LPT is another charge you're going to have to look after to make sure it's fully discharged at the time for the year that the sale is going through. LPT, of course, will be a portion between the purchaser and the seller for the current year. This next point now is pretty important for a lot of people here, I imagine. Has there been any alterations to the property? Architects, engineers, certificates on compliance. When selling your property, the purchaser solicitor will always insist that you provide a certificate or opinion from an architect confirming that the development has been built in conformity with the planning permission. When you bought your properties day one, you would have received this with your title deeds. But from a downsizing point of view, where there's likely to be an issue is small extensions, conservatories that were built without planning permission, and the development may very well be exempt from planning permission, and an updated architect's opinion and compliance will clarify this, but if it's not exempt, then issues will arise and it should be covered off in the contract. Best practice is to instruct an engineer or an architect and just keep your solicitors and auctioneers up to date so they know the situation and so that they can cover it off in the contract if needs be. What contents do you intend on leaving? Are there any contents included in the sale price? Are you bringing white goods, curtains, that kind of thing with you, or even in the property? Again, these issues should just be looked at. Make sure you know what the plan is, and just let your solicitors and auctioneers know if the valuations are to be updated or if goods are to be included. Capital gains tax clearance certificate will only be required on sale of property over $1 million from a residential point of view. And just be aware that if anyone is gifting a property to children or anything like that, that there are capital acquisitions tax liabilities to be aware of, but your solicitor or accountants will be able to keep you up to date on that. What happens at the end of the day on closing? Mortgage to be cleared. Again, just to note, except for an alternative arrangement has been made with your bank, if on closing, if there is any balance remaining on your mortgage, your solicitor will be obliged to clear it to the bank. So just before, probably if there is any mortgage at all, just make sure you have set out with the bank what the plan is. How to instruct a solicitor is the next point here. This, I would say, definitely you need to shop around. Don't just choose any solicitor. A lot of solicitors have just recently got back into conveyancing again as the market has improved, but I would certainly recommend only go to someone that has been recommended to you and just shop around. The market is competitive at the moment. There is quite good prices out there for conveyancing at the moment, but I just on a cautionary note, and I've spoken to Darren and Disney's about this before, be very careful when you see the shiny €750 plus VAT quote for a conveyance. We've seen several transactions fall through just because a solicitor does not have time to give us the necessary time and attention it needs at that kind of a fee, so just be wary of that. Ask for a breakdown of all costs, including third-party fees. I've given you a breakdown of the costs a couple of slides back, but just be aware. Always look for a breakdown of the costs. Know what you're going to be hit with at the start of the process. There is stamp duty, there is land registry fees. All those things need to be considered before. You need to be aware of how this is going to hit your pocket. Ask for realistic timelines as the likely conclusion. I would say at the moment the average conveyancing transaction, no problems, is taking probably between 6 to 8 weeks, all going well, from a legal point of view. So just, it can take time. If there are issues, it'll probably go over that. Solicitors are obliged to send you legal charges in what's known as a Section 68 letter. We're obliged by law to, at the very start of a transaction, to notify you what we are going to charge, what the costs are going to be. So just be aware of it. When you have instructed a solicitor, they should write to you straight away, outlining professional fees and all the charges that you are going to incur. So from a conveyancing point of view, it's straightforward. So if they don't send you the letter, look for it, and again, you'll know what your charges are going to be. That's it for me now, just on the conveyancing process in Ireland. Thanks for listening to me. Hopefully it's somewhat informative, and if anyone has any questions after, please do let me know. Thanks.
Sorry, Brian alluded to costs. I'm not going to discuss costs, but a client of mine rang me up a few weeks ago. I sold his house, I filled an apartment for him, and he bought an apartment. And he said to me, what should my solicitor be charging me? Now, I'm well known for taking pops at solicitors, but I'll be nice because I'm sitting beside one. Service providers, whether they're estate agents, solicitors, or any other service provider, must quote you cost for works. This is not something that can be discussed after the event. I was horrified. But I was being asked what a solicitor should charge. I had quite a lot of dealings with solicitors, so I had a very good idea what he should be charging, which was close to nothing. But you can't get yourself. I'm sorry, you can't get yourself into that position. It is so wrong. And I was horrified. So anyone providing a service in this day is no different to going and buying a pint of milk. There's a price on the top of it, and that's what it is.
And just to mediate the point between David and Brian about coordinating sales, because I don't to cause any friction between the lads. It depends. It is quite possible, particularly in a new development. David mentioned Fernbank on the Notre Dame site, which Lisney will be bringing to the market next year. For example, in a new development, that does allow you to plan and coordinate sales where we know it's going to be launched in 7-8 months' time. We know it's going to be completed in 12 months' time. So you can actually plan the process and coordinate the sales. That is one such example where you can actually quite cleverly plan the whole process. I'm going to pass you over now to my friend Patricia Devney, who will take you through her experience of an upside and downside.
Good morning, everybody. I'm going to give you a snapshot of my experience. Sorry. Good morning, everybody. Just a snapshot of our experience in downsizing. So, this is our lovely old house, which we bought 25 years ago. It was love at first sight, I have to say. But 25 years on, we felt it was time the time was right to downsize. Because, the house was cold, no double glazing, those windows would have cost us a fortune to replace, and attic insulation only. Our 4 children had flown the nest, leaving a lot of belongings behind, returning occasionally to take up residence for a short time. We probably all had that experience. The large garden, which we always loved, had become a chore rather than enjoyable. And probably most important of all, neither Tom, my husband, or myself could see ourselves living in this house if left on our own. So, the plan. We decided to look for planning permission to divide our back garden and build a smaller, energy-efficient house on the lower part of the site. Once we obtained planning permission, we would sell the house in order to finance the build. We couldn't borrow the money that was needed for that because of our age, I presume. We intended to rent for a year while building. So planning. We luckily picked great architects, Murphy Austin in Blackrock, who listened to what we wanted and needed in the new house. Our relationship with them could not have been better throughout the project. We were really lucky. Unfortunately, the relationship with Dún Laoghaire Rathdown, the planning department, did not run as smoothly. It took 3 sets of plans, employing a city planner, and 2.5 years to finally get planning permission. We now have permission to build a very modern, I'm going to show you this now. Oh no. We finally had permission to build a very modern, flat-roofed, 2-storey, partially 2-storey, not what we originally wanted at all. Not at all. Anyway, selling. Now for the task of selling our lovely old house. It was quite hard, I must say. We decided with advice from David Bewley and David Byrne from Lisney to auction the house. That was quite a brave decision, I can tell you. 2014 was not a good year for selling property by auction, but it is a very effective way to sell if you are realistic about your price and prospective buyers turn up to the auction. We did some decluttering, painted where needed, manicured the garden, lit the fires and put the house on open view for 3 weeks. Lots of viewers, a few surveys and several sleepless nights before auction, but luckily on the day it sold. Decluttering. 6 weeks after auction we had to move out. That's the thing about auction, there's a shorter time frame, which at least you know they're going. The real work started in earnest. It was difficult, strenuous and emotional. We are hoarders by nature, but we had to be really ruthless. Every space we had in the old house we had filled, with our children's stuff, old toys being kept for grandchildren, school books, college notes, sports equipment, unwanted gifts, family photos, and that was before we tackled the garage. Daunting does not adequately describe this time. Skip after skip, journeys to the local charity shops and auction rooms. But eventually it was done, and we left our empty house behind us. The final week was emotional, but once we closed the front door, we didn't look back. So renting. And can I go back to before that? Sure. Yeah, fine. Renting. We chose to rent a large furnished apartment in Dundrum for a year. Lots of space with great views of the Dublin Mountains. Yes, it was an extra expense. It definitely was. We could have probably bought a kitchen and what we spent on rent. But a lovely experience. We felt we were on holidays for that year. It is a safe and secure environment. I never imagined I would like apartment living at all. But I really enjoyed it. You lock your door and take off without a backward glance. There's a lot to be said for that. It was very well run complex. We never had any issues. People worry about, litter, noisy neighbours, and all that sort of thing. We managed to be lucky, but it was a good experience. Building. We knew we had great architects, but now to pick a builder. We had a panel of 6 builders who tendered for the job. We picked the right guys. Luck again, I suppose. BCG from Shankill, who have done an amazing job. Kept your budget, finished on time, never cut corners, as well as keeping the neighbours happy, which in our case was really important. Conclusions. I found the whole experience exciting and so interesting. There is so much talent and expertise in this little country, from joinery companies, kitchen designers, stonemasons, paint experts, you name it. We are now living in our new warm, maybe sometimes too warm house, and we find it very comfortable. A lot of decisions have to be made, but we have had such a positive outcome. My friend Liz and her husband were doing exactly what we were doing, building a house on half their original back garden. We bounced ideas off each other, prices and problems, and we both found it really helpful. Because it's a really hands-on job when you build a house, and you have to really literally pick everything from switches to paint colours to wooden floors, every single solitary little thing you have to make a decision on. I am now an expert, as indeed saying Liz is too. So lessons I learned. Have a pre-planning meeting with the planners in your local area. If we had met and discussed what they would allow us to build before submitting plans, we would certainly save time, money and frustration. Decluttering is good for the soul and storage is expensive. Be ruthless. Now, David was talking about brand furniture. We had a lot of issues with getting rid of brand furniture. We gave a lot to family, extended family, because the Youngsters just don't want it, unless it's Georgian, old. They don't want Victorian or Edwardian stuff at all. Or else painted, which I have done successfully, and Liz has as well. We've both successfully painted old furniture, and that's a way of using it. You do need lots of space you don't need lots of space to build. Our site is literally 0.153 an acre. It's not big. In real terms, that's 91 feet by 72. And we have quite a substantial house on that and a nice little bit of garden. 4, move house when you still have the energy and enthusiasm for the project. David mentioned it, and it is really true. 5, apartment living is different, but we found it a great experience. 6, it is expensive to build to a high standard, but a good investment. Finally, we've had a mostly positive, exciting experience. To quote my friend Liz, despite the highs and a few lows, it has been a great adventure and definitely worth it. Would I do it again? Most definitely. Thank you. I'm just showing you just as we have them here. That's the back garden. So there's enough for us really to keep. And then that's the kitchen called family room. And another view. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Patricia. Our next speaker is Mary McCarthy. I mentioned to Mary before, and she's spoken to a room full of people, and she informed me she's a school teacher. So sit up straight, no folding your arms, and no talking at the back, please. Thank you, Mary.
process of downsizing. So why did we decide to downsize? We had lived in a really nice house that we absolutely loved in Terranure. Our 3 children had grown up there. We had lived in that house for 36 years. And the decision was this. In the past, when I was young, I'd seen many of my relations who would say, maybe I'll do this, maybe I'll do that, maybe I'll do the other. And many of them never actually finally made the decision and ended up with somebody else making the decision for them when they were unable to do so. And maybe it wasn't the decision they wanted. So I continually said to Dermot, we are going to make the decision. I don't want in 10 years' time our 3 children saying, oh my goodness, what do we do with Mum and Dad? We can't manage that house. And they may be making a decision that wasn't necessarily the one that we wanted. So we said, yes, we will downsize. And obviously, again, our 3 children had left home, so there were just the 2 of us living in this house. And what did we want? We agreed we would like to get an apartment. And why did we want an apartment? Because, as I said, when I'm on the zimmer frame, I want to be on the level of one place, not going up and down stairs. No stairs when I get to the 100 odd or thereabout. So, all right, so now the decision was that we would look for an apartment. So we kind of looked here and we looked there, and we weren't particularly issue-driven in that we wanted only one place. And we looked at some, we saw some we liked and some we weren't so sure about. But last year, on the stroke of luck, in Rathgar, a development called Marianella came on stream, so it's just been built. It's got a lot of apartments and a small number of houses. We thought, this is it. We live in Terranure, we already do shopping in Rathgar, Dermot has his pint in Covans, Marianella is it. So we said, that's it, we're going for this now. So then the process, what's next? Yes, on the decision of where to buy. This is something that I think we need to give consideration to. The 2 things we always said we needed was, one, wherever we bought, we wanted to be close to little local shops so that we could hunt them down and buy our little bits and pieces when we needed them, and to be on transport, so that if we weren't able to drive anymore, there'd be the Lewis or the bus or whatever. So we downsized for us. Key to the area of downsizing was transport and shops. So that is very important to us, and Rathgar had that. Next step, well, down we went to Disney's in Terranure, and my good friend Michelle, who's hiding there she is, hiding there. Michelle took me in hand and she said, look, we look after you, we hold your hand, and it'll be all right. And I thought, okay, because it is nerve-wracking when you decide you're going to sell your house. So Michelle came and talked to us, we decided a timeline. Now, Marianella are just about due to be ready to move into the early stages now, so we knew that. And this was last January time. So Michelle said, look, we'll go on the market in March. We originally thought of the usual sort of May time, everyone seems to be selling houses. But Michelle said, let's go March, because a lot of people make a decision to move or buy around Christmas time, and they're ready to go. And March is a good time to be ahead of the other people who are going on the market. So we said, okay, March it is. So then, the big job of tidying up the house, just as Patricia said, some rooms needed a bit of painting, we needed some tidying out, we needed to try and make sure the garden was tidy after the winter. So that all got done, and off we went to market. And again, it was advertised with 3 weekends of open viewing, and we had a lot of people viewing. What was interesting was the people who mostly wanted to buy our house wanted to change it. We had 3 reception rooms, a kitchen, a sitting room, a dining room, and a study. And what they wanted was, what all the young people want these days was, a big open plan kitchen come dining room together. So they wanted to kind of knock different rooms together. And our first, we thought we had sale agreed, we had a figure agreed, an offer, it was suitable, we accepted it. And then the people buying came in and said, when their builder looked at it, it was going to cost more than they had thought. So that saved them too. We thought, oh, what are we going to do now? But Michelle had her hands and said, these things happen, off we go again. There are lots of other people who looked at the house and it'll be fine. And sure enough, within a couple of weeks, so another person who looked at it came along, made a bid, we accepted the bid, and that was that. And they are going to, again, knock different rooms together and change around the house. So now, The other things the next thing we had to do was make sure our deeds were in the bank. So we went down to our Bank of Ireland in Terra Europe, got out the deeds, and we had chosen our solicitor. So just as other people would say to make sure you have your solicitor lined up, you like your solicitor, you get them to give you the cost of what everything's going to be. So we knew from Michelle what the costs were going to be through selling, we knew from Catherine, our solicitor, what those costs were going to be. So the process started. We gave the deeds to our solicitor, and the one thing I was just intrigued about, the one thing like immediately she said, now have you got your property tax paid up to date? Have you got your water charges paid up to date? We said yes, then okay. So they were the two things had to be sure they were done. So she set the process in train. She drew up the contract, which went over and back. We both signed it. They sent in a surveyor to look at any changes that had happened to the house over time, and that all went very smoothly. And in fact, everything there went really smoothly. One thing we would have liked was a very long closing date, but they wanted a shorter closing date because their children would be going back into school. And the people buying, they had sold their house and were renting at the time. So eventually we agreed a date in the 18th of August. We decided that's the closing date, so they could move in, their children could move to school. And we knew we weren't going to be quite ready to marry then in that frame of time. But before we moved out of the house, just like Patricia, we were moving from a 4-bedroom house, sort of 1,800 square feet house, to a 1,000 square feet apartment. So again, lots of stuff had to disappear. Our children took some of it. There were many, many visits, as Patricia said, to the charity shop, many, many visits to taking stuff, getting it off to the dump, and stuff that nobody seemed to want to take. We knew we couldn't take with us. Well, we just got a great big van and sent it all down to Herbert Wilkinson in Rathmines for, I don't know how much you got yet, but I'm sure very little. But it went somewhere rather than going to the dump. So yes, you do have to just get rid of stuff, that's true. Now, what's happened to the Leith House? We closed it then on the 18th. And again, this thing, the service that your solicitor was talking about here, I find this very interesting. On the day of closing, Dermot's phone rang and our solicitor got on to us and said, we have to check are there any judgments against you. And strangely enough, there were no judgments against Dermot, but there were 13 judgments against Mary McCarthy. So I must be a very bad person in another life. But luckily, one of these judgments were against me, they were against some other Mary McCarthy's. So they were all sorted out, and then that sale was done. Now, just at the moment, where are we? So Marianella is not quite yet ready. So we're on the homeless list. And what are we doing? A customer of mine said to me, now Mary, if I was you, I'd take yourself off in the car and go around the country, go to places you've never been to before. So spend a week here and a week there and a week wherever else. So that's exactly what we're doing. So we started off and began to, our daughter sent us all these Airbnbs, these holiday homes, what have you. And we started off with a lovely little place that nobody had ever heard of in County Louth called Annagassan. Now, I don't know if you've ever heard of Annagassan. How do you pick out Annagassan? Because as a child, relation of my aunt and uncle lived in Carrick Cross, who spent a lot of holidays with them, and we used to swim in Tarhead and Annagassan. So I said to her, let's go to Annagassan. So this was a lovely little one-bedroom apartment right down on the beach in Annagassan. We spent a week there. And then we said, let's go sort of south. So we went to Tipperary and we went to Clonmel. So we spent 2 weeks in Clonmel because we loved it down there. And as usual, we were on tours. We went to the Rock of Cashel, we went here, there, and everywhere. With 3 daughters living in Dublin. So this week we're in Dublin. Next week, I'm not sure yet. we're hoping that Marianella will be ready in 2 or 3 weeks' time. And we're very excited about it because if we made the move we wanted, the apartment we wanted, the area we want, and yes, we feel it's all good, and we're very excited. So I look people in the eye and I say, Marianella is where I'm going to live for the next 30 years, you know. And they say, yeah, right, yeah. So I advise anyone who's thinking to do it. Make your plan. Make your plan of what do you want to buy. Do you want to do like Patricia, to downsize to a smaller house? Do you want to downsize to an apartment? But do make the plan, and don't be afraid. Do it. It will be great. Now, sort of what you worry about, the decluttering was dreadful. Like it was getting this stuff down out of the house. The worst part was our 3 daughters who had in boxes out in the back of the utility room my junior search history notes, my uni cert maths notes, my college chemistry notes, and eventually we took out all these boxes and they just said, well, bin it. But you know, 10, 20, 15 years ago, they couldn't bear to get rid of any of these. So that's the difficult thing. And deciding what to take with you. You know, what furniture will take from your original house will fit into your new one. You know, what can practically come with you, what can't. But it's a great plan, and I'm very excited about Marianella, and I'd recommend go for it, but plan it.
Mary, thank you very much, and I'm glad we fitted into your schedule on your tour of Ireland. Thank God our seminar was on this morning and not next week. God knows where you'll be. Thank you. Really, really interesting, and Patricia as well. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the formal part of the morning. Really, this is as much about what you folks can take from the experience, so we would now, for the next 15-20 minutes, are available for questions and answers session. If you did have any questions from the speakers, I'll bring the microphone down to you and then we can decide who the most appropriate person is to answer.
I was just wondering if you could clarify this talk about stamp duty, which I understand is on second-hand properties. What is the situation with stamp duty on new builds?
Yes, there is stamp duty now. Yes, there is stamp duty, but it is less. I'm not quite sure how it's divided out. It's in some way divided out between the site and the apartment itself. There is stamp duty, but it can be less. Ours is less. It's less than it would be on if you were purchasing a second-hand property. It wasn't a new build, but there is stamp duty, yes.
Well, there can be complications, say, if it's a one-off site and you buy the site and then you're building the house on it afterwards. But in general, it's 1% on the purchase price.
Because there was no stamp duty on new developments a number of years ago, and that's gone now, is it?
That's gone.
Thank you.
The first time, you often hear people saying you don't want to lose the first-time buyer. At the moment, there isn't any relief on stamp duty.
Hi, could I ask about the local property tax, please? Just in planning my own downsizing, it's just one thing that's on the back of my mind. Obviously, you put forward a value at the point in time when we all had to. And is that still the value it holds today up until 2019 or 20? And can it be questioned?
So local property tax, that was struck in May 2013. There was no revaluation. It's meant to be property is meant to be revalued every 3 years, and they waived that. So that would have been 16, and the next one would be 2019. So the figures, it is in this imaginary world that some people occupy, the figures are deemed to have stayed the same. So the question is, and the problem arises, when was the figure in May 2013 wrong? It was a self-assessment tax, and frankly, the whole country is wrong. Some people are more wrong than other people. Some people are wrong, but actually will be right. This is you have to apply for tax clearance certificates, and you have to make a submission. And we write letters, and your solicitors do this. I'm not going to speak as a member of the revenue, but certainly up to now, an increase of 50% from May 13 to today was acceptable, and I have been told that that figure can now be pushed a bit further. But there are people whose figures are wrong, and that's no different to being wrong with the revenue in any other regard. You could be liable for penalties and interest. But by and large, they're reasonable. I'll let Brian fill in the gaps that I don't know.
Thanks. So what I've come across really here is, particularly in Dublin, there has been massive increases in property valuations, which is all great. But with the LPT, so it's banded, so if you go up 2 or 3 different bands on your NPT evaluation, you may be required to go and get specific clearance from revenue to say that, yes, what we're paying is okay, and continue to pay that amount up until the next valuation date in 2019. And so from my experience, I've had to get specific clearance for dozens of properties over the last 2 years, and I haven't had one refused from revenue. So you can take from that, there has been a massive increase, and revenue they have granted general clearance, specific clearance in most cases.
Now, have we any other questions?
Good morning, thank you for the excellent presentations. It's just a very brief question in relation to the capital gains tax. You mentioned about properties in excess of $1 million, but I thought principal private residence that there was no gains tax of any description.
It's the capital gains tax. The clearance certificate may be required if it's over $1 million. So the clearance certificate, but you won't be liable to CGT, but a CGT certificate may be required. So it's just a matter of going to revenue again, saying this is a residential, but from the purchaser's point of view, because it's over $1 million, it's over the threshold, so they have to get the CGT 50 clearance. So it's something that your solicitor will have to do for you, and it won't cause you an issue. There was murmurings over the last couple of weeks that there may be CGT coming down the line on residential, but I think we're a good bit off that yet.
I think a government that introduces capital gains tax on your principal private residence will be out of government for between 50 and 100 years. It's a side to side, but your principal private residence is a tax-free gain, and acres and all the rest of it, that all goes with it. But there are instances where your principal private residence, if a price is paid that is deemed to be excessive, and this came into play when land prices, people were buying bungalows on an acre for redevelopment, and they were getting excessive prices. It's really the exception, not the norm. 99 times out of 100, your principal private residence, more than that, your principal private residence is a tax-free gain. But there can be instances where you are deemed to be making a gain because it's not being sold as a house.
Something to be aware of. We're in a downsizing event here, so I don't think it's applicable. It may arise where if somebody moves into a house, buys it for 400,000, and 12 months later sells it for 500,000, can you say it was your principal private residence? And there are issues around that kind of thing where CGT can come up. So in general terms, I think it's about 3 years that's considered the most that you must live in your house before it can be considered your principal private residence from that point of view.
Thank you. Brian, you gave an indication for a house costing $250,000 that the fees would be of the order of $3,500.
Yes.
If you double those figures from, say, $500,000, what's the fees?
Roughly, your stamp duty will go up to... Stamp duty is still 1%, so 1%, $5 grand. And the fees otherwise are all the same, I think, as per within a couple of €100 or something.
So it's not double?
It's not double, no. The stamp duty will go up, everything else is pretty much the same. I think a house over, I don't know the exact value, over 400, I think the land registry fees go up to €800. It's not nothing drastic. No.
Thank
you. Hi, good morning. I'm feeling rather confused as a loan sayer, basically. I think I know I need to not necessarily downsize, I just need to buy something cheaper. But I am also getting the feeling that it's costing an awful lot of money to move house. Can somebody please fill me in? Thank you.
cost of moving house. There are professionals to be paid, be they estate agents and solicitors, and there is stamp duty. There are other collateral things, moving costs, possibly refurbishment works on the new property or alteration works. I think it's difficult to generalise about what the cost of moving house is, but moving house is expensive. I remember moving house. When I moved house, I paid stamp duty at 9%, and my father pointed out to me that that was more than he paid for his first house. Luckily, 9% stamp duty presently not applicable. Estate agents' fees, I suppose, are between 1–1.5%. Solicitors' fees are whatever Brian said they were. There's VAT on all these things because we have to keep our esteemed politicians going. I think it's very difficult to generalise, but it is an expensive thing to move house. It probably is coming in at between 5 and 10% of the cost, and I have not analysed that, and I'm sure you could pare it back somewhere. But I mean, there are costs associated with it. The reason people think of downsizing is one of the reasons is ultimately a saving, and you may have to spend to ultimately reap the rewards of the saving.
I suppose since we just recently done it, I might just outline what expenses we've incurred. There's our house, you can see there, it's 4 bedrooms, 3 reception room, 2 bathroom, that's it. So before we pushed on the market, we spent, I suppose, maybe about 2,000. We got a certain amount of painting done. The garden room, we would do it ourselves, but we did bring in someone to tidy it up. It was winter time, and neither Dermot and I wanted to do it. So we could say, preparing the house to sell it, about 2,000. Then we have our fees to Lizzie's and our fees to our solicitors. The other one we incurred was, obviously, you may have to store your furniture. We have that process at the moment. So we found this company, Bray Removals, which were excellent. They came, they packed everything. We paid them a fee. It was about $1,300 to do the packing. It's out in storage in Bray at the moment, and I think that's costing us about €60 a week. And then when they bring it back over to our apartment, so in all, furniture removal and bringing back of our furniture would probably be about 3,000, I'd say. So that's there. And then there's the stamp duty, that sort of thing. And then there may be some new things we may need to buy for our apartment that we don't actually have a house there. So you need to think of money to spend, preparing for sale, your auctioneers, your solicitors, your stamp duty, and if you have to store furniture, that sort of thing. And maybe like Patricia, if you have to rent for a year, and she was rented, and we're kind of on the move around the country. So yes, it is expensive. And in the case of our house, since we're downsizing to an apartment, we will be bringing a certain amount of money out of the house that will be changed to us, if you like, and we can decide to spend it or do whatever we want to do with it afterwards. But it is expensive, and you need to list down in your own head or list it down on paper what are those expenses. So they were our expenses.
I spoke about being ruthless about your furniture. We found it quite expensive to store because we kept too much, basically. Even though our architect came and spent a morning with me putting stickers on things that she thought might suit the house, modern house, really we kept too much. And, it doesn't do you any favours. Yes, it all came to the house, and you're down when I saw the stuff coming in, because I knew when I saw it that it wasn't going to work. And therefore you have to go about getting rid of it all over again. So you have to be ruthless, and, really, if the storage was, I found quite expensive, we stored too much. So that's my bit of advice.
Does that answer your question okay, Helen? Okay. Was there any other questions?
Could we have some idea of what solicitors' fees would be?
Just a rough idea.
You're putting me on the spot in a room full of people. To be honest with you, very much dependent on mortgages to be redeemed, taking out a new mortgage if you're buying property, that kind of thing, purchase price, sale price. In general, I suppose, if you're buying or selling a property for roughly 500,000, I could do it for 1,200 plus that.
Thank you, Brian. Now, have we any other questions? Okay, well, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our downsizing seminar this morning. As I said beforehand, tea and coffee and the Lisney crew and Brian and our speakers are available. If you want to talk to us further, please join us across the courtyard in this area for tea